Overthinking. Are you the type of person who can't make a simple decision without mentally replaying everything that could go wrong? Your brain doesn't choose and move on. It rehearses, double-checks, and runs through every possible what-if scenario. That's the hidden advantage of overthinking. Your mind is built to catch mistakes and prevent problems before they occur. Overthinking is a cognitive style where your brain runs repeated mental simulations before committing to action. Instead of deciding quickly, you analyze, play through events, and plan for contingencies. High error sensitivity means you catch problems before they become expensive mistakes. You spot risks early, think several steps ahead, and anticipate consequences that blindside everyone else because your mind already tested the outcome. While everyone else is saying, "How did we not see that coming?" you're sitting there thinking, "I literally told you it would." The cost shows up as mental fatigue, delayed action, and difficulty trusting your first instinct. But that's just the price of being the only one in the room who actually thinks things through. Sensitivity. Do people tell you that you're too sensitive? That you read into things or take things too personally? A comment that others brush off sticks with you for days. A shift in someone's tone hits harder than it probably should. That reaction isn't weakness. It's a nervous system that feels things more deeply than most. Sensitivity means heightened emotional awareness. You take things to heart, feel things more intensely, and pick up on emotional undercurrents that others completely miss. The upside is intuition and emotional depth. You're more aware of what people actually mean, not just what they say. You sense when something's off, when someone's hurting, or when a situation is about to go sideways, often before anyone else does. This makes you better at understanding people, connecting on a deeper level, and responding to needs that go unspoken. Your depth of feeling also means relationships matter more to you, which makes you a more caring, thoughtful person than those who breeze through interactions on the surface. You're the one people come to when things actually matter because you're one of the few who genuinely gets it. The flip side is emotional overload. Small comments land harder. Rejection stings deeper. But you're also the one people trust with the stuff that's real. Procrastination. Why is it that nothing seems to get done until the deadline is close enough to hurt? People call that laziness, but the truth is, your brain doesn't fully engage until urgency strips everything else away. Without a deadline, distractions feel just as important as the task itself, so nothing gets prioritized. But once pressure rises, everything instantly becomes clear. Noise gets filtered out, and your brain locks in. Execution becomes fast, decisive, and efficient because you're working in a state of forced clarity. The upside is this leads to creative problem-solving and high-speed performance when it actually matters. While others chip away at a project for weeks, produce mediocre drafts, and second-guess themselves the whole time, you knock the whole thing out in a moment with full mental engagement. And at least half the time, your last-minute work is better than their 3-week effort anyway. Stress spikes, guilt cycles, and missed early opportunities are the obvious costs. You live with that tension constantly, and other people see it as poor planning. What they don't see is how differently your brain functions when urgency finally kicks in. Impostor syndrome. Have you ever looked around and thought, at some point someone's going to realize I shouldn't be here? Even when things are going well, success feels temporary, like it could vanish with one mistake. Impostor syndrome is persistent doubt about your own competence, even when the evidence says otherwise. Success doesn't feel earned, it feels accidental. But what looks like insecurity is actually hyper-awareness. You notice gaps in your knowledge more clearly than most people, which keeps you from overestimating yourself. While others assume they're ready, you're still studying. While they're winging it, you've already reviewed everything twice. This keeps preparation high and complacency low. You often get better outcomes than raw confidence ever would because you've accounted for weaknesses that confident people ignore. You over-prepare, which means you're rarely caught off guard. Meanwhile, the arrogant guy is scrambling because he genuinely believed his cockiness alone would carry him through. The trade-offs are chronic self-doubt and difficulty internalizing success. You can't just enjoy wins because your brain is telling you that you didn't earn it. You just got lucky instead. Shyness. Why does everyone else seem to know what to do socially while you're stuck trying to figure out the rules? Where do you stand? When do you speak? How do you even know what to talk about? Somehow, no one ever explained that part to you. But when you're not talking, you're listening. And that's an advantage most people don't have. You actually hear what people say, remember details from conversations weeks later, and pick up on emotions others completely miss. While everyone else is planning their next comment, you're absorbing what's really happening. You don't blurt things out or dominate conversations unnecessarily. You wait until you have something worth saying, which often makes your input more valuable than the noise everyone else is generating. You also develop deeper empathy because you're actually paying attention to people instead of just waiting for your turn to perform. The problem is, people often misread your hesitation as disinterest or assume you're unfriendly when you're just figuring out the situation. But once you're comfortable, you're usually the most genuine person in the room. Self-criticism. Your harshest feedback doesn't come from other people. It comes from inside your own head. That internal pressure isn't pleasant, but it serves a function. You don't need external feedback to know when you've missed the mark because you catch it immediately. While other people are waiting for a boss, coach, or teacher to point out errors, you've already identified the problem and started working on it. Rapid learning and continuous skill correction happen without relying on anyone else. You improve faster, hold yourself to a level of quality that others don't, and catch mistakes early enough to fix them before they matter. You're basically your own quality control department, which means your work is almost always better than people who just submit whatever and hope for the best. The downside is lower self-confidence and unrealistic standards. You never feel like you've done enough because your brain is already analyzing what you could have done better. Emotional guarding. Do you keep parts of yourself private, even with people you trust? You hold things back, not because you don't feel deeply, but because once something is out, you can't take it back. Experience taught your brain that emotional exposure carries consequences, so it manages disclosure carefully. The upside is it gives you emotional stability and strong personal boundaries. You don't overshare with the wrong people, dump emotions prematurely, or regret what you revealed later. When you do open up, it's deliberate, which makes those moments more meaningful and less likely to backfire. You build deep relationships, but they're selective. You don't waste emotional energy on people who won't handle it well, and you avoid the mess that comes from exposing yourself too early or to the wrong audience. While everyone else is trauma dumping to acquaintances and regretting it the next day, you're keeping your cards close until you actually know someone deserves them. The problem is guardedness slows intimacy, trust takes longer to form, and communication can feel constrained when you don't readily open up. But it also protects you from exposure that doesn't serve you, keeping your inner life shielded until it's actually safe to share. Conflict avoidance. The moment tension starts building, you're already looking for an exit. You don't wait for the argument to start because your body reacts before words ever get exchanged. That urge to leave kicks in fast, and it didn't come out of nowhere. Conflict avoidance is a tendency to disengage when emotional escalation feels likely. Prioritizing exit over confrontation prevents unnecessary altercations, protects your emotional resources, and keeps situations from blowing up. While others are still in the middle of an argument that's going nowhere, you've already assessed that nothing productive will come from staying. You avoid damage that can't be undone, preserve relationships that heated exchanges would destroy, and save energy that confrontation would drain. Sometimes the smartest move is just not engaging. That's the advantage that most people miss. You're out the door while they're still yelling, and 2 hours later they're exhausted and you're fine. The downside is that avoiding conflict can teach people that you won't push back, so they keep pushing, and when things don't get addressed, they sit there and build into quiet resentment. From the outside, it can look like you don't care or won't stand up for yourself, when in reality, you just don't see the point in fighting. Need for control. Someone else is supposed to handle it, but you keep checking anyway. You reread the message, follow up, make sure it's done right, even when it technically isn't your job. People constantly tell you to just let it go, but to you, that feels irresponsible. Your need for control and intolerance of uncertainty keeps you on top of things, which makes you dependable, thorough, and effective at maintaining it all. You catch problems before they become failures. That's the hidden advantage of refusing to leave outcomes to chance. While everyone else assumes it'll work out, you're the one making sure it actually does. You're the reason the group project didn't implode, the event didn't fall apart, and the deadline actually got met. Everyone else gets to relax because you're the only one who refuses to. The problem is you can't let things go because your brain knows what happens when things are done wrong. That leads to burnout and frustration when people don't meet your standards. But at least things don't break when you're the one in control. Social withdrawal. When life gets overwhelming, you don't lash out. You disappear for a bit. Pulling back isn't about rejecting people, it's your mind reducing input so it can function again. Think of it as a cognitive reset. When input exceeds capacity, your brain needs to clear the backlog, and getting away from others makes that possible. Reducing social demands allows you to regain clarity, energy, and emotional balance. It also supports deep thinking and independent processing without the noise of constant interaction. You're not avoiding people because you don't care. You're managing your system so you can come back calmer and engage properly later. While others are burning out from constant contact, you're giving yourself space. It's like putting your phone on airplane mode so the battery actually charges instead of draining too fast. The downside is that people often think you're upset with them, when really, you're just overloaded, and withdrawal works only as long as it's temporary. But if it extends too long, connection can be impossible to rebuild. Perfectionism. Why does good enough never actually feel good enough to you? Even when no one else sees a problem, you do, and it sticks in your head. That constant dissatisfaction isn't about impressing others, it's about meeting your own internal standard, which is often set unrealistically high. The upside is catching details others miss drives quality and craftsmanship that stands out. You produce work that's more accurate and more reliable because you refuse to turn in anything that's not up to par. When something matters, you make sure it's done right, not for recognition, but because anything less feels wrong. This means your work usually holds up longer, performs better, and requires less fixing later because you caught the issues before they became problems. You're the one whose stuff doesn't fall apart 6 months later, doesn't need a follow-up correction, and doesn't embarrass you when someone looks at it years down the line. The problem is projects take longer because you keep refining, and sometimes they never get done. Your brain always sees what you could do better, and that standard won't bend, even when it would be easier if it did. Skepticism. Someone brings up a news story and everyone immediately buys it. You don't. Your first thought is, "Yeah, I doubt that," followed closely by, "That sounds made up." While other people are reacting emotionally, you're already questioning whether any of it is real at all. Resisting social proof and emotional certainty means you assume information may be incomplete, exaggerated, or outright false until proven otherwise. While others are convinced by headlines, you're checking sources. While they're reacting, you're analyzing. This keeps you from being swayed by narratives that don't hold up under scrutiny. You avoid misinformation, resist manipulation, and don't fall for premature conclusions. In a world where everyone's trying to convince you of something, skepticism is what keeps you from being an easy target. You're the one who didn't fall for that obvious scam, didn't share that fake article, and didn't lose money on that too-good-to-be-true deal. Everyone else got played while you were over here asking basic questions. The downside is you tend to come off as overly negative or difficult when you question things others easily accept. It's not that you're hard to convince, you're just not easy to fool. A lot of what you've been told you need to work on is actually what makes you effective. You don't need a different personality. You need a better understanding of the one you already have.